Welcome back. Robert Mueller is facing an unlikely roadblock from Chief Justice John Roberts, who temporarily blocked the special counsel from granting a subpoena for an unnamed foreign corporation as part of the Russia probe. So when can we expect to learn anything, if at all, about this mystery corporation, and why did the Chief Justice intervene? Helping us to shed some light on this very complicated development is Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Hans von Spakovsky. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Heather.
So tell us, what do we know, if anything, about this foreign company, and what do you think it has to do with the Mueller probe?
Well, it's a grand jury subpoena of a foreign corporation that is owned by a foreign government. Now, the corporation's not identified, neither is the government, and we don't know what information is being sought. But I think one of the reasons that the Supreme Court may have taken this is because the subpoena makes it clear that they're seeking information for actions taken by this foreign corporation outside of the United States. Now, Mueller says he's still entitled to this because he said these actions had an effect inside the U.S. But basically, this foreign entity, the foreign government, is claiming, look, we have sovereign immunity. We're immune from domestic U.S. political court processes, and we don't have to respond to the subpoena. So that is a very interesting question, and it's a determination the Supreme Court has to make.
And when will they make that decision? And does this specifically, do we even know if this has to do with the collusion part of his investigation? Because it's branched into so many different areas.
Yeah, we don't know if it has anything to do with the collusion investigation because, as you know, many of the indictments that Mueller has come out with have had nothing to do with the Russian collusion investigation. We should probably hear something soon. The Chief Justice asked the parties to brief him by the end of December. So now the court has it, and they have to make a determination. But look, even if they issue a decision, we still may not get any information about which foreign government this was, who the corporation was, or what information they're seeking. The court just may say, yes, they're entitled to the information, or no, the grand jury is not entitled to the information.
And even if they say yes, the information may never be released to us.
No, that's exactly right. Not unless at some point in the future there are criminal indictments that result from this investigation.
So do you think this was part of the whole, I know that legally if someone is being wiretapped, if there's conversations back and forth, maybe that's how they discovered about this foreign company?
Well, it could be, but again, the key thing we know from these secret filings is that these actions occurred outside of the United States.
Okay.
So we really don't know what's going on here and whether it has anything to do with the actual collusion investigation.
So even if there were conversations that were recorded with someone who is here currently in the U.S., that would not allow for necessarily them to be able to be subpoenaed?
Potentially not, but again, that's the question that the Supreme Court has to decide. Are these actions tied enough to the United States domestically to make this subpoena valid?
Okay, got it. Well, it's very interesting, and a lot of people keeping their eye on it, and possibly a decision as early as this afternoon?
There's no telling how quickly the Supreme Court will act on this.
Okay. Hans, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Sure thing, anytime.
Have a good day.
President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, calling for the investigator to be investigated. He wants to know if Special Counsel Robert Mueller helped destroy evidence. This after the Justice Department's Inspector General turned up thousands of missing text messages between former FBI employees Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. Many are still missing. The IG says it was all due to a technical error. To former Whitewater independent counsel Ken Starr, he is author of Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation. And there are some extraordinary overlaps, Ken, between your investigation and what we're seeing now with Mr. Mueller. And a fascinating subject about how you got President Clinton to testify before the grand jury. Of course, it was a telecommunication. It wasn't, he didn't actually go to the grand jury. They didn't actually go to the White House, but it was direct, and you got it done. So you got President Clinton to testify. I'm wondering, if you had Mr. Mueller's job right now, do you think you could get President Trump to testify?
It really depends, David, because we had a compelling interest in getting the president's testimony. It's not at all clear that Bob Mueller needs the president's testimony. In fact, from all that appears, he was happy with the written responses that were turned in several weeks ago, just before Thanksgiving. There seems to be a little bit further skirmishing and so forth, but the respect for the presidency requires, I believe, just as a matter of comity among the branches and within the executive branch, for Bob Mueller to be able to say, ultimately to a judge, I have to have his testimony, as opposed to the written responses that I have. I think it's going to be a sort of a high burden for Bob Mueller to have to surmount if he goes there, and we don't know that he is going to go there.
Now, we don't know, of course, what Mr. Mueller has in the form of evidence, but from what you've seen, is there enough evidence to justify an interview?
Not from what I've seen, no, because let's recall that from that appointment now a year and a half ago, the charge was there collusion? And in the public record, David, we've seen no evidence whatsoever of collusion. We've seen lots of evidence, I think overwhelming evidence, of Russian interference. And those Russians should be called to task. In fact, a number have been indicted. So let's let that process run. We'll see whether we can get jurisdiction over them and so forth. I think they're going to end up being fugitives from justice. But Mueller has served a very important investigative function and public information function by blowing the whistle on the Russians, but we need to know the definitive answer from Mueller. Was there collusion? Thus far, no evidence whatsoever.
Well, you are an investigator, consummate investigator. You work with the best prosecutors in the nation at the time of your investigation. You have a way of knowing what prosecutors have and what they don't. What are your suspicions? Do you think that he is in possession of some evidence that may show collusion?
It's possible. Anything is possible, David, but I doubt it. You're giving me a lot of credit, but I am behind the veil of ignorance and not having what Mueller has in his hands. But I think we would have heard something, especially with the going forward with General Flynn and the number of steps that Bob Mueller has taken that suggest that the investigation is coming toward the end. I seriously doubt it. I doubt that there's going to be a January or February surprise, but it remains to be seen.
Well, right now, as I mentioned at the top of my introduction to you, there are calls to investigate the investigator. And coming from Rudy Giuliani, it's not surprising, coming from the president's lawyer. But there is an interesting case to be made that evidence between Lisa Page, who worked at the FBI. By the way, we showed a picture of Carter Page. That was incorrect. Forgive us for doing that. But there's Lisa Page. She worked with Peter Strzok. In fact, they had a personal relationship. Peter Strzok, of course, was dismissed after some misdoings on his part. But their messages between each other showing extraordinary bias against President Trump, some of that information was destroyed. Should somebody be held to account for that?
Absolutely. You cannot have this. Destruction of evidence is a classic form of obstruction of justice. And so we need to know the answers. I'm not sure that this means we need any sort of special apparatus. I have great trust that the Inspector General, the Office of Professional Responsibility within the Justice Department will do the job and will do it credibly. But absolutely, when this kind of allegation is made, we need to get to the bottom of it.
The IG, by the way, did say it was a clerical error, so we'll wait and see whether there should be more investigation. I want to switch again to sort of a correlation between what you were doing and what's happening now. There's a lot of media angst now about President Trump and Rudy Giuliani, his attorney, attacking the special counsel. But You had the same kind of animosity directed towards you from President Clinton. In fact, in your book, Contempt, you mentioned one case where you were directly threatened by the president's lawyer. Explain.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Before the interview and the appearance before the grand jury, President Clinton's lawyer said, if you ask essentially embarrassing questions, I will take you to the knife. Now, I took David Kendall's comment to be entirely metaphorical. I know David, he's an honorable guy. But the point is, this is rough sport, and the stakes are extremely high. And yes, our investigation, yours truly personally, constantly attacked, vilified, and the like. It's just in the nature of it. I wish it weren't so, but it was true during the Clinton years. Here's, I think, though, a very key difference. Even though President Trump tweets, I wish he wouldn't tweet to the extent that he does and saying the things that he says, but that's his business. He's the president. But on the other hand, his team has been cooperating with the special counsel. So some nasty things being said, but the right things being done. That was not true during the Clinton investigation when we had to fight tenaciously to get basic information and by the way, constant invocations of executive privilege, and I think we're going to hear a lot about that come the new year.
All right. Well, speaking of the new year, some people wonder if this investigation will even be over by the end of 2019. Your investigation went on for a long time. You were criticized for spending money. Democrats expressed their ire about that. But has this investigation gone on too long?
I don't think that we know whether it has or hasn't. We know that it's been very productive. I mean, even with all the name calling, look at the indictments and the guilty pleas and so forth. I will bet you a nickel that Bob Mueller has his eye on the calendar because he was appointed in May of 2017. And so when we're all noting the new year and watching bowl games and so forth, I think Bob Mueller is going to be looking at mid-May and say to the team, let's get it done.
Mid-May. We got a date from Ken Starr. His book is Contempt. It's a terrific book. It's amazing how history does at least rhyme, if not repeat itself. Ken Starr, great to see you. Thank you for being here.
And I guess we're not cool if we're not all on board on it.
Yeah, I just applaud the mother you just had on, and my heart goes out to her experience, and thank you for coming out and being so vocal and a champion for your son and for other mothers. And this is something I've experienced with some of my family members. I firmly believe that pot is a gateway drug, that it is more potent than people believe, and it is something we should be educating on. And I have 2 young kids. It's something that we need to talk about and have an honest discussion about what it can do and the effects. And like she said, brains are developing till the age of 30. So it's not something we should be taking lightly and just dismissing out of hand.
I was roasted on Newsweek and I don't know, they don't even publish anymore an actual news magazine, do they? Oh, it's just a website now. That's fine, but they trashed me because I routinely express my dissatisfaction with this permissive approach to marijuana use, and so they roasted me in an article, and I said, good, that means I'm doing something right. Awesome, fantastic. keep it coming, Rana. Let's talk about where the RNC is as we start this new year. We see the legislation percolating already on the issue of DACA. Let's start with that. The president, I think, boxing the Democrats in on this by saying, okay, let's put up or shut up. You really want this amnesty? Then you've got to hit chain migration, stop it. On my interview, he said E-Verify. He basically said the whole RAISE Act has to be passed and the wall, and let's do it. And it looks like the Democrats are already balking.
Of course they are, and it's common sense, and you and I get this. The reason we're in the place we are right now with DACA and with the Dreamers is because we didn't have comprehensive border security. We didn't have a wall. If we give amnesty and we don't have the wall and we don't do all the things that the president has said we need to do, we're going to end up right in the exact same place 20, 30 years from now. So we have to have enhanced border security, and we need to have the wall. The president has been firm on this. It is a non-negotiable for him, and of course Democrats are going to use their playbook again, which is, we're not going to work with this president on anything. We're going to play out the clock and hope that we can get gains in 2018 and make partisan wins at the expense of the American people and at the expense of our border security.
Well, and I think, again, the Republicans have to remind themselves of how they got elected, how this president managed to withstand the onslaught by the traditional media and Hollywood and even a lot of people in business community. He did that by sticking to his guns and being true to what the people wanted from the beginning, which was the rule of law and for safety, security, and America first. And if he does that, I think the sky's the limit for Republicans. I really do.
Well, this year, at the end of the year, you saw something that's never happened with a politician typically, which is he kept promises that he made. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem and Israel. He passed tax reform. He's focused on deregulation. He's expanded our energy footprint. He's been tough on terrorism and put ISIS on the run. I mean, taking care of our veterans. This is a president who ran on things, and he's delivering. And nobody's used to that, but he's got to continue to do that. And Republicans need to stand with him. That's what our voters want to see, and it's refreshing, and it's good for our country.
Well, and I think that, again, America is back. We even see the New York Times have to grudgingly acknowledge today, with red tape losing its grip, firms ante up. Spending is on the rise as confidence grows. All unrelated to Donald Trump, I'm sure, Rana, all unrelated.
Yeah, it's all an anomaly, of course, as companies are saying, we're going to raise your wages to $15 an hour without a government mandate. Of course, this is all carryover. But, I mean, life is better, and that's the great thing about getting out of Washington, as I do regularly, and traveling the country. People feel good about where this country is going and the leadership that they're seeing. And you're right, companies are giving $1,000 bonuses and improving wages, and consumer confidence is high, and unemployment low while labor participation rates are going up. We are on the right track, but we have to keep pushing forward. We can't delude ourselves that Democrats are going to come across the aisle. I just don't believe they're going to do it.
No.
Their playbook is resist, obstruct.
Yep. Resist and demonize, dismiss, resist, demonize. That's their entire agenda. I want to play for you a soundbite from this fellow Matthew Dowd. Sorry to spoil the beginning of your year, but he's on ABC. He's a never-Trumper, of course. He's on ABC on Sunday, and he talked about how Republicans have to behave and what they have to advocate in order to win in 2018.
So what do Republicans have to do to really beat back the Democrats?
I think they have to. I mean, if they won't follow this advice, but I'm going to give it to them, which is they have to take on the president in a more concerted, strong way. They have to define themselves differently than just the party of the president. They have to define themselves on certain Republican principles that they've walked away from. They won't do it because they've enabled this president all year long. But if they want to save themselves in any way in these elections, they got to take the president on.
Rana, go ahead. You can tackle that one.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. So we have enabled the president for large tax cuts, the largest tax cuts we've seen since Reagan, for deregulation, for great judges, for a stronger military, for taking care of our veterans. I mean, time and time again, when Republicans are working together, we are seeing our country be stronger. We are seeing more jobs. We are seeing higher wages. That's what Republicans should learn from last year, is working with the president and fulfilling the promises we made on the campaign trail is a winning strategy for our country, and that will pay dividends in 2018 in November when voters go to the voting booth and they say, am I better off than I was 2 years ago, and did Republican policies help me? And the answer right now is going to be yes, and I think that will only get better if we continue to double down on the promises we made.
Ronna McDaniel, it is great to have you on the show, and have a wonderful new year. Check back with us soon. And thank you for your words of wisdom on the new glamorization of pot usage. MSNBC is basically right now running an infomercial for pot usage. It's despicable. I mean, it really is. But let's definitely make sure young people see that, because that will really discourage things like date rape on college campuses or other No other problems will result from that, with people being more impaired. That'll work out well for the country. Unbelievable. Ronna, thank you so much. You're listening to your Healthy Radio Addiction, 855-40-LAURA. As the pot business is booming, would you invest to make a buck, or do you put your values first? Don't go away.